Okay, hello and welcome to assignment number 3, the site inventory diagram. So what we're going to do here is identify certain the categories that we identified in the base map: the hardscapes, plant materials, structures, and utilities, and site furnishings. We're just going to separate these features in different diagrams and provide information about the specifics of them. So in this case, in hardscapes, for instance, we're going to convey the concrete parking area square footage, the gravel parking area square footage, the concrete patio square footage, concrete sidewalk, concrete culvert, and then the total parking area in that diagram. And we're just going to highlight, and when we have that diagram, everything else will be turned off except the hardscapes. And we'll do that for each of these categories. So the first thing I'm going to do is go back to that base map that we had, and we should have already created with all these layers, and most of the information really just waiting for us to access. And the first thing I'm going to do is the hardscapes, because that's going to go in the order of the assignment. We have annotations, which are the text pieces in here, our labels, but they're very generalized right now, and we want to make them a little bit more organized. So the first thing I'm going to do is create some layer sets. So I'm going to do an EX again, annotations, and this time I'm going to give it a subcategory of hardscapes. Okay. And I want to make that just yellow. What I want to do then is actually just do a layer isolate of all the labels. But I want to make sure that the hardscapes pieces are actually turned on. Well, actually, we can keep it turned off and keep everything red just to keep it simplistic. But this would be easier. So that should be turned off. You'll see that the hardscapes is turned off. So what we want to do is change some of these and just put them in their respective groups. So for hardscapes, it's going to be the sidewalk, it's going to be the concrete parking area, the gravel parking area, it's going to be the patios, and it's going to be the culvert. So we're going to take those, I'm going to go into my properties manager and change those to hardscapes, and as I do that, they disappear. Now I'm going to continue to do that. I'm just going to double click in here to the one I created actually. And just copy the existing annotations first part and create a new layer, and just Control V that in to make it faster. And this time I'm going to do plant material, and it's off, so that's good. And then I want to find the existing canopy tree, the shrub, the planter bed. I believe that's it, and I want to put that on the annotations plant. Perfect. So we're going to continue to do that. Create another layer. Control V. This one's going to be the structures. And the structures in this case are going to be the building and the fence. And we'll go ahead and put those on the structures annotated layer. Those are gone. Great. Again, Control V. And I'm going to call this utilities. Okay, and I'm going to grab the electric poles from utilities and the AC unit and change their layer. Okay, do it again, and I'm going to call this parameters. Alright, it's the boundary parcel line, and I'm going to change that and put those on parameters. Okay, now I have site furnishings basically left in the terrain, so I'm going to Control V, and this is site furnishings, and that's going to be the light pole. It's the only element of site furnishings, so that's okay. Change it. It's gone. The last one's going to be the terrain. Okay, terrain. And I'm just going to grab, well actually, rather than creating a new layer, since this is already on a layer, let me actually delete that. There's nothing on that. I'm going to come back up to the first layer that has annotations on it, and I'll just rename that terrain. Okay, so now everything will be on its appropriate layer. So let me do a lay on. So now I want to go to my, make sure that I'm on my hardscapes annotated layer, and I want to turn everything off right now but that. So I'm going to click So I'm on my next one, my parameters. I'm going to come all the way down, everything but the title block, just turn it off for now. And click back to your information from the assignment. I'm just going to copy this actually. It's exactly what we need. It's all the information we need to convey. Bring it back into AutoCAD. Now I'm on my annotated hardscape layer, so I'm going to go into my annotations and do my multi-line text. This thing should be the 20 scale, I believe, that we've created. I'm just going to Control V this, and of course it's super tiny because it didn't annotate correctly. So I just want to add a one-to-one to this as well. And then, so let me try that again. Delete it. Add the one-to-one scale to this. Let me try to do a multi. Okay, and then Control V. Okay, great. So I had to add my one-to-one scale to my annotated list to make this work. Alright, but this is the information that we need to convey. So I'm going to double click into this multi-text box, and I'm going to make this, I believe, a 0.18 because I think it's 0.15 right now, and make it bold so it stands out a little bit more. And this is all the information we need to convey here. So I'm going to turn these layers on one by one in order to acquire the information. Some things we're going to have to modify, but most of it we can just take off immediately. So I'm going to go down to the concrete parking area, which is under hardscapes, right? And I can do the parking area concrete. So I'm going to turn that on so the parking area concrete area pops up. Now we created the boundaries before so we can pull off square footage. So now I can select this item, and under my properties dialog box I can scroll down, and it actually gives me the 3,369 square feet that it is. So now I can double click here in the multi-text box and 3,369 square feet. And maybe I'll just put an equal sign there. Okay. And that's going to be true for all of these actually, so I'm just going to copy that and then try to save myself this step. Okay, great. Let's come all the way down. Okay, so we've kind of prepped ourselves. So I have the first one. So now I'm going to turn on the gravel parking area. I don't need to see that anymore. I want to see the gravel parking area. And I want to do a lay ice, or rather, just click on it, lay ice. So I don't need to do that. Scroll down, and it's going to give me 4,144. All right. And the concrete patio areas, and this will be multiple, so we'll do that to be a little bit different, but use a command this time called area, and we're going to do the add because there's multiple areas, and we're going to select O for object, and I'm going to select each of these patio areas and hit enter, and it's giving us 178.39. so we're just going to, we'll be specific, we'll call it 178.39. So 178.39, that's square feet for the concrete patio areas. Now the concrete sidewalks are going to be a little bit different. So what I want to turn on to now is my boundary lines. We have to keep in mind that everything is going to be within this boundary line here. So there goes my boundary line, and what I want to do now is turn on my sidewalk. We turn the patio layer off. We don't need those. So we've created areas, but the area extends beyond our boundary. So we're just concerned with what's in our boundary because technically we're not supposed to touch what's beyond it. So I'm gonna need to go back into that sidewalk boundary layer. So I'm gonna click on that, or the hardscape layer, and I'm gonna do another B poly. Pick internal points. And I'm going to do the areas, that one's already existing, but the areas that exist inside of the boundary line. So I'm going to come in here too and just do that. And do this. And enter. Okay. So now I want to do my area. And I'm going to do the add and then object. And I'm going to select the ones that I need. So that's going to be this, this, that, and the top layer we just created there. We want that, which is the back and face of the curve basically. And that's giving us 509.24, 509.24. So that's 509.24, 509.24. Alright, so now we need the culvert. So I'm going to turn back off that sidewalk and turn layer off. It's fine. Oh, we're fine because we're already in that layer. Make sure that you're writing in the appropriate layer. This is already in the annotated text layer, so that's where it's going to stay, even though I'm on another layer. I need the culvert now, so I'm going to come up to the culvert, turn that on. It's one object, so I'm just going to select that whole thing. It's concrete as well. Come down, and it's 23. It's giving us the 23 square feet. And that's going to be the 23 square feet. And then we need the total parking area, which is going to be a combination of the two it's asking us for. So I'm just going to pull out my calculator and do that. So it's giving me a 3369 plus the 4144. And that is giving me 7,513 square feet. Okay, great. So that's all the information we need for the hardscape. So now I'm going to kind of continue and do this for each piece. I'm just going to do a lay on again and turn everything on. And I see that this thing kind of looks like a mess. It's over stuff. So I'm just going to kind of move this around my F3 to turn stuff off, just so I can see it right now. Now this won't matter when we print this piece because we're going to turn everything off but the layers that we need, but just so that we can see it, we're going to make it easy now. Now the next thing it's asking us for, let's go back to the assignment for instructions. We've taken care of hardscape, so now we need to identify the plant material. So we're looking for, in this case I'm just going to go ahead and copy this over now, and I'm going to go back to my drawing. Well, actually I needed to, and I'm copying it here, and then in Control V, the information in that we pulled, and this shouldn't be bold, just the title piece. Now this is on the hardscape layer, but we need to make that and put it on the annotated for the plant materials. That's what we're doing next. Okay. Now it's asking us for the canopy tree quantity, species, and height. So I'm going to give you that information. So we're going to obviously count these pieces. So easy way to do that. We'll just do a lay ISO right now, and we'll select the plant material, the canopy trees, and then our text. So we're left with our annotated information for our plant materials and the actual symbols for the canopy trees. The shrubs are turned off right now, and I can just kind of highlight these. And should be a block count. So we need to type in block count first. Let's do that. Oops, B count. It's 11. So it's going to tell you how many you have here. So in this case we have 17 total. Alright, so it's going to be 17 trees, a quick way that you can count them manually too. So 17 trees, so that's going to be the quantity. So we'll type it in as we go, so I have the information. So the quantity is going to be 17. The species are going to be willow oaks. And the height we're going to say is 30 foot on average. Alright, so that's the first set of information. Now we're also looking for the quantity, species, and height of the shrub. So I know the species are going to be Carissa holly, if I'm spelling that correctly. The height we're going to give them, I think they're going to be small in this case, so we're going to say they're 1.5 feet. on average. Just so we have a kind of a vertical representation or an idea of what that's supposed to be, in addition to the plan view, elevation that we have of it. So the next thing we do is the planter bed area. So we're going to go over here and just identify that plant area. So turn that on. And again, we have the same situation we had before. I'm going to turn my canopy trees off. Turn the layer off is fine. We need to isolate the portion within the boundary line. So I'm going to go back and turn that boundary line on, which is under my parameters, so we can see that. And I'm going to jump onto my planter bed layer. Okay. And actually, we're missing out. It's asking for a lawn area, and we didn't identify that before. So this is, in this instance, this is actually not planter bed. This should have been lawn area. We're going to identify it as a lawn area. So we're going to say EX and plant material. We're just going to add another layer. And oops, you want to call that lawn area. Just going to Alt-C to make that current. And just so we can see it, to make sure, I'm going to come in here and do a Bypoll. Great. So that's going to be the part of our lawn area. So I'm going to go ahead and identify the planter bed area, which is basically just here now, using my area command, and then add object. Click on my areas, and it's giving me 254.14. 0.14 square feet, and we'll go ahead and put an equal sign there. And then the lawn area, then we still have to identify. So we're going to do that by just first turning everything back on right now. We're going to do a lay ISO. And what I want to keep in here now to help frame everything is definitely the building and the roof. Really just the building. We don't need the roof line. I want the hardscape. So I'm just selecting the items that are going to help me frame the area that I need for my lawn. I don't need that. I definitely need my boundary. There goes the boundary. And I think we're good. Let me grab my patios as well. And then the AC units. So outlines are important to have. So when I isolate that, you'll see that I'm left with an area. So this is basically in here should have been the open lawn area. So now that I'm on my lawn, I'm going to double click on here and make sure that I'm on my lawn, turn layer on my plant material lawn area, because we're going to identify and hatch. And I'm going to go ahead and change the color of that just so that I can see it. I'll make that blue. I'm going to do Bypoll and island detection. And I'm going to click in here, and all that area is going to be identified as lawn area. So I'm going to hit enter. So now I have my lawn area identified. So now I'm just going to I'm going to turn back on my annotations for the plant materials. Okay, and I'm just going to do a lay ISO. And I want to see that, and I just want to see my lawn areas to make this easier to look at. And then I'm going to do the area again, and then the add objects, and select all these pieces. Collectively 8,209.10, 8,209.10, 8,209.10. That's a comma, and this is going to be an equal sign. Alright. So that is all the information that we need for plant materials. So we're just kind of building this thing up bit by bit. So you can save this thing periodically if you would like. I would highly recommend that. You don't want this thing to crash and lose your information. So I'm going to go back now. Oops. I'm going to go back now to the assignments. Now I'm looking at structures, and I'm just going to copy this information over. I'm going to come back over here, and I'm going to type in copy. I'm actually going to copy the last text box again. Double click in here. Control V, structures. In this case, we want to make that the 0.18, and this should be bold. And we'll go ahead and remove this other one here. So there go our structures. Okay, that's good. So in structures, we just need the building of the square feet, the square footage of the roof area, and then the fence in linear feet. Okay, so I'm going to I'm going to change this. I'm going to put this on the structures annotation layer. So I'm going here and changing its layer type to structures annotation. You'll see why this is important later on. And I am going to do a lay ISO of that, the roof line, and now we wanted the fence line. I believe that's fence. I want my scale. Okay. So now we see the fence and the building line. And what I want, I'm just going to click on the fence line, and it should give me, and scroll down, and the length is 378 feet and 10 inches, right? So 378.10. So, and the type, linear feet is 378.10, 378 feet, 10 inches, 10 inch, and this is a chain link fence. We're going to call it a chain link fence. Let's keep it consistent with the equal signs. And the building, the square footage on the roof, that should be an easy calc just to pull. So it's going to click on that outline and scroll down. And the area is 2,953 square feet, 2,953. Alright. 3 square foot area. And actually, we'll just keep this in hyphens. Let's just do that. That was easier. Make it look neater. Okay, great. So there goes our structures, and we have that. Keep it moving. Go back down and go into the assignment. So two more categories. We're just going to select utilities, copy. Come back into this. Do a lay on. And let me just copy one of these. Kind of come up here. And I'm going to make Control V that, utilities. And this should be 0.15. Oops. Let's bring it back like we did last time. And just make that utilities. Just different ways of doing this stuff. Show a different way. Enter. And then we need the AC unit height. We're going to call those 3 feet. Electric pole height, we're going to say is 20 feet. So that was an easy one. That's just identifying this information. We don't need to really click on the item for that per se. So, but I'm going to go here, and what's important though is to put that on the utilities annotated layer. So I'm going here, and this should be on utilities. Great. This one looked a little low, like it might have been off the page. So I'm actually just going to move this on this side so we see it. Back to the assignment. The last one is just site furnishings, and it's basically just the pole height, but we're going to copy that and bring it over. And come back into AutoCAD. And I'm just going to borrow another one of these. Alright, double click in here and just Control V. And 7 inches. Let's move the site. Alright, and make sure that it's on the site furnishings annotated layer. So site furnishing. Alright, So that's that. So we have all the labels done now at this point. Go back and make sure that's right. That's the last one. So now what we're going to do is actually create the different layouts so that we can render them and finish this piece to convey the information cleanly. So we have a layout here. What I want to do is right click, and I'm going to make a copy, move or copy, and we're going to create a copy and have it move to the end. So created a duplicate layout for us. What I'm going to do is right click, and I'm going to rename the first one Hardscapes. And I'm going to click on this title block and change the base map to Hardscapes. Alright. And this should be locked, so you should be able to zoom in and out. If not, you need to redo your scale and right click on your viewport. And one day, hopefully it'll come up. And you want to go to display locked, yes. Alright, so I'm in here, double clicking, so now I have access to my model space. What I want to do is my hardscapes now, I just want to isolate basically the hardscape pieces and the hardscape annotations. So this is why we put everything on layers, and this is where it comes in handy. So I'm just going to turn, I'm going to pull this out a little bit so that we can see the viewport freeze here, this option. Actually, I could have just zoomed over actually. So let's just do that. And you have this option called FP freeze. That's viewport freeze, and we're just going to turn some things off in here. So I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to scroll down and just pretty much turn everything off but that in the title block under my viewport. When I do that, everything turns off. Now for the hardscapes, obviously we need to keep those on. So I'm going to go back up to my hardscapes and select that whole section and just click that icon to turn all my hardscapes back on. And it gives me back all the hardscapes. So that worked out really well. So now everything's in a layer, so I can quickly isolate these things. So I'm in my viewport. I just click my move tool to reposition the information for my hardscape here. And that's kind of when I have it towards the top. So I have it here in this instance. Okay, looks good to me. Everything seems like it's labeled. The sidewalk piece is labeled. That's fine. Alright. So now what I want to do is print this piece out. So I want to do a Control P. I'm not sure what that error was, but whatever. So click OK. So now I'm going to go to my desktop. And I'm just creating a folder. You create this where you need to, but I would work definitely organizing this. I'm going to create a new folder. There goes my new folder. And I'm going to call this Site Inventory Diagram PDFs. I'm going to double click in that, and I'm going to create another folder. And I'm going to call this, well actually you don't need to do that. Just drop this in. We're going to create it more, we're not going to separate the text for this. So we're going to call this one just Hardscapes. So it should process it and spit it out for us. Great. So I just want to go to that and make sure, oh, it's going to open up for us. Great. That's reading the way I want it to read. So let's see all the information conveyed. Hardscapes is there. All the pertinent information is displayed here. So now all I need to do is just render these pieces in so they're more visible and just easier to see. Alright. So I have that. I will just close that out. And now I'm going to do another repeat layout. So let's go back here. I'm going to do this for each one now. So I'm going to create a copy and move to the end. So now we're going to go to, I believe it was Hardscapes Plant Materials and the Structures. So rename Plant Materials. Let's just go ahead and do the other one for Structures. let's go to plant materials. I'm going to double click here first and just change that name of that basement. And plant materials. Stretch that out a little bit and grab that icon. Okay. The same procedure, so I'm going to double click into the viewport and I'm going to basically turn everything off except the title block. In this instance, the viewport freeze. This time I'm going to turn back on my plant material. Click here, turn back on the plant material pieces, and then go to your plant material. And isolate everything. I'm going to turn them back on. So I have these lines. Great. Now I'm going to move this so it makes more sense and it's not cut off. I'm going to actually move this one to this side. And I'm going to bring that in a little bit actually to make it fit. And 30-foot average, we'll bring that over now just to pop it over. And half the job will just be positioning these things so it makes sense. Let's try that over here. I guess we'll just have to pull that in a little bit. That'll be okay. Okay. I'm just going to clean that up so it just makes more sense and just return that. Get rid of the quantity portion. It's Carissa Holly. We didn't get the quantity. We will there in a second though. So let's actually count those shrubs. It's easy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So there's 11 shrubs here. So we'll do the 11 Carissa Holly, 1.5 feet on average. Just be consistent with that. In this case, you don't need parentheses then. And perhaps we'll put spaces in between this one. Alright. And just to be consistent, we'll probably go back and change that for the hardscapes to just double space the pieces in. Get rid of that. Okay. Great. So that's what we need to see. And paper space, and I'm just going to Control P this. And I'm going to call this plant materials. Okay, great. And close that out. Jump back here, just do the double spacing piece to make that consistent. Okay. And pop over into structures. Oops, structures. Double click in here, same thing again, the same procedure over and over and over again. Okay, viewport. In this case, I'm going to turn back on my structures, and I'm going to go to my structures layers, and hold shift, turn my structures back on. Alright, so this guy's kind of lost. Bring that over. And it will just be consistent here. There. Alright. And I'm just going to Control P this. and call that structures. Print. That will probably just remain black and white, honestly. I don't think we need to render that, but we'll have it as a separate piece to look at. Close that. What was the last one? Utilities and structures, utilities, and site furnishing. So 2 more. So we'll just go back to layout 1. And we'll just change that name again. Oops. Utilities, go back up here. Alright, so I'm going to go to utilities. I'm going to change the name. Utilities. That should be site furnishing. Alright. So we have plant materials, that's all clean now, and then we're going to our structures, that's clean. So now just going into utilities, double click, same procedure. So I'm just going to go here, take it all the way up, freeze everything, and we are in utilities now. So go back to my annotations, I'm going to go into utilities, turn that on, go into my utilities piece, which is pretty much just my AC units and AC unit pads, electric poles. Great. And in this instance, I do not see my annotations, utilities, and then I'll turn them on. I did. So these must be, no, they're off the chart, so let's bring them in so we could actually see them. That would be helpful. So I'm just going to put that right there, and we'll go back to utilities here, and there goes our utilities tag. And I'm just going to bring that to the right hand side so it stands out a little bit more, and just is, oops, I'm going to say has a 3-foot height just to be specific. And same thing here. Let us say 20-foot height. And just delete that. Alright, so there goes some utilities. So you might not render those either. And save that, Control P. And we're going to call this utilities. Okay, great. I'm just going to close that out. And the last one's going to be the site furnishing, just the lonely light. So I'm going to double click in here, come all the way down, select this, come over here to my VP, turn everything off. Annotations didn't make it. I'll help them out now. Site furnishing needs to stay on. And then the site furnishing here is the Bypoll. Right, so I'll just take and move this over. And move over to the right, give some balance. Just gonna double click, space. Okay. Alright, so now we're just going to Control P that. And this is going to be my site furnishing. Alright, so now we have all these things in separate layers. Now what we're going to do is move into Photoshop. Some of this will render. I'll show you some quick rendering techniques, and you should have watched the Photoshop video before doing this exercise. And really what we want to focus on rendering are the hardscapes and then the plant material. Everything else is kind of small elements, and in this instance we won't spend the time to render those, but I will drop some color into the hardscape diagram and also the plant material diagram to help it read a little bit better, because it's a lot of information being conveyed there. Alright, so once you have your Photoshop open, I'm just going to go Control O for open. And I'm going to navigate to that folder. So in this instance, where am I? I thought I was saving that to the... No. Perhaps since I'm doing my downloads, maybe I created a folder here. No. So you need to pay attention to where you're saving your folders, obviously, or you have issues like this. So hopefully it's in my documents, which is there. And site inventory diagram PDFs. Okay. So what I want to do is then just open up everything. So I'm just control clicking and opening up. Well, shouldn't have done that. Don't do that. Just open the files that you need. In this case, we're just going to do the which one is this? Hardscapes. So we want that one. And plant materials. Everything else we don't really need, so I'm just going to cancel that. So hardscapes and plant materials, that's what I want to see. Alright. So bring back up my layers. So what I want to do first is create a layer. And bring it to the bottom. Double click and call this first one lines. And you can see we turn these things on and off, they disappear. So I'm going to call this one background. And I am going to do a Shift F5 on that layer, and that's going to be a color, a fill. So I'm going to do the background color because my background swatch is white. And so that we can actually see our diagram. So what I'm going to do is create a layer for my canopy trees first. So I'm going to double click here. Canopy trees. Now there are a couple of ways of doing this. We could have, from Photoshop, actually isolated these trees separately and just dropped color into them, which would have been a lot faster here, but there's not a lot of them, so we're going to do it a more manual way, kind of. My magic wand tool. And if you don't see it, you can just hold that small box and navigate to it. Not quick selection by magic wand. Make sure it like contiguous is selected. I'm going to go to my lines, and I'm just going to click and hold Shift to do multiple pieces. The tree pieces. I'm just kind of clicking in all the spots between them. Connect these trees. There. There. Oops. Control Z. Just keep on holding Shift. There. It's just a really quick way of doing it. So now I'm going to the canopy tree, and I'm going to select a green color here. I'm going to do a green like that. Or maybe we'll get kind of bluish to it. Okay, looks good to me. And I'm just going to do a Shift F5. This time I'm going to do a foreground color because the foreground swatch is green. And drop those colors in, and I can see the areas that I missed. So I'm just going to Control D to deselect and go back to that line. Shift. You can zoom in by holding Control and hitting plus to zoom in. Holding Shift is grabbing those last little areas that I didn't get. And Shift. There. Okay. Control plus to come in. And the last little piece there. Same thing, Shift F5, drop the color in. Great. So now we have some color behind those trees. Now we want to do is our lawn area, and that's going to be in this piece here. So I just want to grab that and do a lawn. Oops, cap locks are in lawn area. Go back to my lines. Oops. And make sure that contiguous is selected. Click in there. So everything is selected around where the lawn would be. And go to the lawn layer. And I'm just going to get a different color. And Shift F5. Okay. That's going to represent our lawn, and we actually have some lawn here too, so let me go back to lines and get that lawn piece too. And again, Shift F5. Now we're doing is just dropping color in so we can more easily see these pieces. So we have, what, 2 more areas. And this could be the planter bed. And planter bed, I guess I'll make a brownish color. And I'll go to our lines again, use my magic wand, and just in between all that. And that'll be a planter bed color. Shift F5 quickly. And now I'll do a little trick here. I'll control click on this, and then I'll actually edit, or Control Shift I, which should inverse the selection, which is not inversing the selection. So where's the inverse selection? Inverse, Shift Control I. Okay, whatever. So it's inverse the selection, so now just the white should be selected. And I know that white's going to be the shrubs, which will be on top of the planter bed. So I'm just going to grab a different color green for the shrub. Maybe I'll get kind of a hue from this. I'm just going to use my eyedropper tool and grab that green from that, just so I can kind of get something that's in that family. And Shift F5. And oops. So I did the Control Shift the inverse, but it's giving me everything, so I guess that won't work. So Control D. Don't do that. Go to your lines, hit W for magic wand, and then just click on each one individually, and then just hold Shift. Okay, and shrubs. F5. There we go. Alright, so there goes our shrub. So that kind of helps us read the design a little bit better. And then we can do some cool things and make this thing pop, just to give it a little bit more of an aesthetic. We can drop shadows on our tree. So for Canopy Tree, go to this Function button, and I can drop shadow. And we're just going to shift the shadow up in this instance. And size out, put the distance out a little bit, spread, size, distance, so soften that some. So what we want to do is make sure our canopy trees are all the way to the top, and that way their shadows and everything will cast over top of everything else, so it actually looks like it's dropping a shadow there. We can also do some things like do an inner glow, just to give it a little bit of a hue difference. So I'm going to go to inner glow, click the color. I'm actually going to come in here and select the color from that and just make it a darker hue of that, pull it down. And instead of screen, I'm going to go darken. And this was a quick way just to give it some more visual interest and depth to your piece. Change the choke a little bit, just kind of bring it in, just gives it a little bit more depth. Just click OK. So it looks like some trees now. You can kind of do a similar thing for the lawn areas. And actually, we could add a stipple to this. I'm going to show you some quick little filters. So I'm just going to add a little noise to it. And I'm going to make it monochromatic. You can see it kind of gives it a little bit of a bump the more I do it. So I don't want that much. I want it to be very subtle. But just something there to give it some visual interest. That looks good. Okay. And the same thing, you can try it with the Control D. Clicking on that again, you can do the inner glow thing. Also, what you can do is well, in this case, I want you all to do is just do a burn. So you grab that burn tool, using my Marquee Tool just to make it a little bit bigger. My right bracket to make it larger. Or you can do the adjuster here. And what it does, it just kind of burns the edges of pieces. It takes it and darkens it, just to give it some kind of visual interest. I'm just doing this with my mouse. Kind of darken it around the trees. You see where it's getting a little bit darker. The more you do it, the darker it'll get. So you just kind of want these subtle accents along there, just to make it a little bit more interesting. On this assignment. Okay. And just helps your piece read a little bit more. So I'll Control minus to zoom out. So we kind of have that going on now. We have some information conveyed. We can do the same thing maybe for the planter bed. So we can do a filter and then be noise, add some noise. We'll take that down a little bit so it's not as loud. You think things are a little light? That looks a little light to me. I can do a Control L to play with the levels in this one. If you feel like your piece is too light, maybe make it a little bit darker. Alright, I'm not going to mess with the shrubs because they're really tiny, but I'm just going to draw a little bit more interest and a little bit more life. And that'll be the first piece for this, and you can just, once you have this done, but what I don't see here and what I've omitted and what we're going to bring in right now is this, the property line. It's important to have that. So let's go back to AutoCAD here for a second. And I'm going to cheat a little bit. Well, actually I'm not. I'm going to go back to layout. And I'm going to double click in here, and I'm just going to do a lay ISO in the viewport, and I'm going to select my property line, and I'm going to Control P and print that off and call this just the property line. Alright, so a nice property line conveyed. Close that out. I'll pop back into Photoshop and do a Control O, open that, and make sure that it's media box. Okay, great. Now I'm just gonna copy all that and Control Tab back over to this, Control V, and when I Control V, because we brought it in the same way by the bounding box, it drops right in, so your layer should drop right in perfectly. And I'm just going to call this property line. Now, to make it stand out more, I want to change its color. So I'm going to go layer, and I'm going to do a new fill layer, solid color. I'm going to use the previous layer, and I'm going to grab this kind of magenta color for it. And then I'm doing a Control E. This is right above the property line. I'm doing a Control E to merge them, so it's actually that color now. And I'm just going to take my Marquee Tool by hitting M and coming around here. And then I'm going to do a Control Shift I, my inverse, and delete everything on that layer, because all I want is that property line. And everything else, the black, the other magenta pieces will disappear, and you're left with the property line. And I actually want to bring that property line all the way to the top so it stands out. And I want to fix that because it's bothering me. And we can actually change the stroke on this thing to make it stand out even more. The color, we want to make sure you grab that magenta color that we had, and you'll see that we have a more prominent. I'll just maybe do it at 2, maybe at 1.5. Obviously, you can't do half sizes. So it's something that we see that's a constant element in the piece that reminds us where we are in our design. So we have this, and that's going to be the plant materials. Now, the property line, I don't need that anymore, so I'm just going to close that. No, we don't need to save that. So we have one more layer with it, which is the hardscapes, and I'm just going to hit M for my marquee, and or actually Control D to deselect this, Control A, and then copy, Control C, Control Tab to come back to this last drawing, and Control V, and everything should pop right in. Now this is going to be my hardscapes. Now I want to keep this all on one layer, so I'm just going to separate everything now. So my lines for this information, I'm actually going to hold shift and select all those and then hit Control G and to make it a group, and it organizes it into a group, and I'm going to call that my plant materials. Alright, so if I turn that off, everything disappears with plant materials on it. Alright, so one thing I want to do before I do that though, I want to come in and go to my, and actually once you're happy with this, once you have your graphic the way you want, what you want to do, because we're going to get rid of these produced by AutoCAD educational product, if you just to let you know how to do that. I'm just going to go into each of the line pieces, in this case property line, canopy trees, color. So my lines are right here actually. Oh, it's just one line set, that's right. So I'm going to use M from my Marquee Tool, and I'm going to zoom in just so I can see them a little bit better. I'm going to drag out and kind of go over top of that because I don't want to see that anymore. And just hit delete, just to delete those lines. So you don't, it's an easy way to get rid of that, the mark, to make your pieces look cleaner. Could be a little bit distracting sometimes. Yeah. And then we have one more here. And we'll just get rid of that as well. Okay, great. And then we'll go get rid of that. So that's a much cleaner piece. So now what I want to do is definitely save this. And I'll keep it in this folder, and maybe I'll put it in my new folder that I had before, and that will be this will be my inventory diagrams. Click OK. Turn back on my hardscapes, and while we're there on the hardscape lines, we'll just go ahead and actually get rid of those pieces as well. The other ones won't be like this, but it's good to have your rendered ones and just show you how to do that again. You can turn these in like that. Alright, great. So now I have a cleaner base. So it's the same concept we're going to do here. So that'll be a line work. I'm going to create a layer. I'm going to call that, concrete parking area. And I'm going to go back to my line so I can actually select something. Make sure my contiguous is on. I'm on my magic wand. I'm just going to select that concrete parking area. And I'm going to kind of grab a kind of a warmer tone. And shift F5, foreground colors, fine, great. So that's going to be my concrete area. Now you'll see that I have some white and stuff showing now. Rather than trying to go in and just individually select, because I'm on my own layer, I'm going to hit B for brush and make sure that I have a solid brush selected. Use my bracket tool to make it larger, and I'm just going to paint over all that. Now what I'm going to do is when I pull my line work above it, the line work appears and you're fine. Okay. So now what I want to do is my gravel area. And I'm going to come over to my landscape, magic wand, gravel area. Great. And I want to create a kind of darker tone there. And shift F5. Okay, use my brush tool. Same thing. And again, the hardscape lines are above it. Everything's as it should be. Then I want to do my patio areas. Back to my lines, need that. That's a patio, and that's a patio, patio. We'll grab this tone here and just go a little bit darker. Or maybe not. We'll grab a warmer brown tone for the patio, just to help distinguish them from everything. Patio areas, Shift F5. Great. Then we just need the sidewalk areas and the culvert. So we just need to do sidewalk. And I'm going to go back to my hardscape lines and grab that sidewalk piece. And I'm just going to render the piece within the boundary line. And we'll bring the boundary line back out as well too. We'll do that. I'll grab that sidewalk, and this time I think I just will go a little bit darker. So my sidewalks will be there, and now Shift F5. That going on. And then lastly is going to be the culvert. And hardscape lines. Zooming in. And you could always isolate your line work, your labels from your line work, and bring your line works in as a separate label if you'd like, to make this easier again. But this is not a lot going on, so we're just trying to keep it pretty simplistic here. We're going to call that culvert, and the culvert maybe it's kind of in between darker. Shift F5. Oops. Shift F5. Okay. Culverts there. There was actually that little piece at the front of curb, and we'll just do that just to be consistent, so you can actually render some pretty tiny areas. So I got my hard lines pieces on them, and zoom in, and just select those little pieces there, and they're really part of the just and then select the color that I want with my eyedropper tool. We'll go back to sidewalk, and that curb's going to be part of the sidewalk. Shift F5. And there you go. Control D to deselect. And now we have our, there's one more patio area out there. So let's actually do that last patio. Let's go to hardscape lines, hit I again, and make sure that I'm on my patio layer. And then just Shift F5 again. And you all can add some noise and stuff to this if you like. So for the concrete parking area, definitely the gravel area, you can definitely add some noise. So just gonna add some noise there. Maybe scuff that up a little bit more, make it a little more gravelly. That looks pretty good. And then the concrete. Maybe that one. It's a little bit of a noise. This less noise, so filter. Noise, add noise. I'm going to take that back a little bit so it's not as much. Just a little bit. I'm going to make it 23. Okay. It's a little bit of texture. And again, you guys come back and use your burn tool. If you like to kind of do edges and things like that between the pieces. And again, you can do your gravel area kind of the same way. This kind of gives it a little bit of depth. Add a little bit of that to the, and you can play with this as long as it looks good. Some add noise, a little bit too much. Let's add maybe a 19 to those, maybe 15. And you can kind of burn those edges too. Maybe as they touch the. Alright, looks good. And then the sidewalk filter noise if you'd like, just to give it a little bump. Maybe that, we'll leave the culvert alone. And that'll be a piece. Now what's missing now still is that property line. So I'm actually going to bring that property line above everything. And this group is fine. So I'm just going to group this new information, again, Control G. And I'm going to call that my hardscapes. And you notice that the hardscape piece now is overlapping the property line, and it doesn't look good. So it's on my line, so I can click that, use my Marquee Tool to select it, just select it, just that piece of it, and actually move that over so it's no longer there in that in the design extension. Alright, so I want to make sure all that looks good. So that looks good to me, and my plant material piece looks fine. Okay. Great. Okay. So once you have those pieces done, and actually I noticed that I didn't change the spacing here, but it's easy to go back and do. We would just go back into AutoCAD and export that layer. I'll show you that actually. So if you have an error like that, you can go back, and that was what? That was in hardscapes? Yeah. So in my hardscapes now, I can always go back to that in AutoCAD, go to my hardscapes layer. It's odd that it printed like that, so let me print this out again and just replace what I had. And yes, I want to replace it. And that's fine. I go back into Photoshop and kill the old one. Delete it. No, I don't want it. Control O. Go back out of that, and then hardscapes. Open that up. Media box. I'm just going to Control A, Control C. Back to this. I'm just going to Control V. Should pop right in. My hardscapes. Bring it into the hardscapes layer. Replacing the lines, hardscape lines here. And you'll see that it's perfect. Everything lines up again, so I don't have to re-render anything. Rename that hardscape lines. Just delete the old line set. Notice that that is in the way now, so I'm just going to select that actually. Whoops, I don't want to pull that piece over, so I'm just going to grab this here and pull that over out of the way. Perfect. If you have your produced by Autodesk, it's not a big deal, but if you want to get rid of it, it's easy to get rid of. So now once you have these pieces and the property line is consistent for all of them, you'll see it doesn't change. What you want to do is then just convert these to PDF or save them out. So I'm just going to that Control P, that prints. What you actually want to do is save as. So when this thing stops. Okay. So now we'll actually go save as. And we'll create another folder again for this one, and we'll call it finished PDFs, or how about rendered PDFs, because these are actually rendered PDFs. Double click here, and this first one, and not going to be a Photoshop, it's actually going to be a PDF file or a JPEG. JPEG's fine. We call it PDFs though, so Photoshop PDF. And this first one's going to be hardscape. Okay. And save. It's fine. And when that finishes saving out, we'll just do the same thing for plant material. So let's run over on plant material now and just Control Shift F is the same thing. PDF maintains the last piece, but this time it's going to be plant material. And save it. Yep. Save PDF. Yes. So these will be combined now. Now the last part of this assignment then is going to be combining these pieces and to submit it into the folder. It looks like a property line missed a piece, so I'm just going to go back to Marquee Tool and just delete that. And if you made that same mistake, you would just save these pieces back out again. You want to have a nice finished piece. But when you're done, you can minimize Photoshop. I'm in my Adobe Acrobat. You're in Acrobat Pro 6, but you want to go to Create and then combine files into a single PDF. You're going to add the files together. This is if you had to create a pack of information like I want you to create here. So you're just going to combine these files. And I'm going to go into the My Documents. Alright. And I want to turn in also the not the property line, the site furnishing structures and utilities, even though we didn't render those. So I want to add those. Add a few more files and navigate into the rendered PDFs and select my last two. Add those. And if you want to change the order, you can just easily do that. So it should have been Hardscapes, Plant Materials, Structures, I believe. Try to get it in the order we asked for it in the assignment. So Hardscapes, Plant Materials, Structures, Utilities, Site Furnishing. And back to here. So Plant Materials, Site Furnishing. Oh, don't need that one actually. Some of the old ones. And combine files. Okay, move up. Okay, well, whatever. Order's not that important. Let's just make this thing. So once you have this thing, put it in order if you want. It's fine. I'm not really pressed. But combine your files. When you combine the files, it'll go through this prompt. You'll combine them. And you'll rename it. Alright, so you'll see that you have all 5 now. And even here, you can change the order if you'd like. Alright, cool. And then we'll just need to save. You'll give it a name. So we'll just call this completed site inventory for now. And you would upload this piece to your Google Drive. Now you need to change the name to correspond with the assignment folder, but so whatever the assignment tells you to turn in, you need to put in your student name and LDAR 171. So let's actually name it that. And just copy this information over and do that way. And come back over here, and it's not responding. Hopefully it'll come back to us. If not, let's pretend that it did, and you would just save it the appropriate name and go through the same methodology you did last time with uploading your assignment into the Google Drive folder here. Computer's on the fritz, so you'll have to forgive me. And you'll just upload. You'll open it in your own drive, and then from that you'll be able just to click and upload the file. Navigate to your file, and then upload it there. If any questions, let me know, or send me an email, or talk to me in person.